Jake Morrison stepped off the transport shuttle and onto the main platform of Galactic Council Station 7. The massive structure hung in neutral space, far from any single star system. It had been the center of galactic politics for over 300 years. Representatives from 47 different species worked here, negotiating treaties, settling disputes, and maintaining the delicate balance of power that kept the galaxy from falling into chaos. At least, that was what the official records said. Jake had done his research during the 6-month journey from Earth. The reality looked very different from the pretty words in the Council Charter. 3 species controlled everything. The Kravan Empire commanded the largest military fleet in known space. Their ships patrolled trade routes and enforced council decisions, always to the Empire's benefit. The Veltharian Commerce Guild held the economic power, controlling banking systems and major trade networks across dozens of worlds. The Zephrite Collective possessed technology centuries beyond most other species, and they guarded their knowledge carefully, selling small advances at enormous prices. These 3 powers formed a triangle of control. They competed with each other, but never seriously threatened each other's core interests. Smaller species existed in the spaces between them, struggling to maintain independence while avoiding being crushed by the games the major powers played. Jake's assignment was simple in theory but complex in practice. Establish Earth's permanent presence at the Council. Build relationships. Learn the systems. Keep humanity's interests protected. His superiors back on Earth had been clear about one thing. Do not make enemies, but do not become anyone's puppet either. The station's central hub bustled with activity. Jake watched aliens of every size and shape moving through the corridors. Some walked on 2 legs like humans, others floated, crawled, or moved in ways that hurt to watch too closely. Universal translators handled communication, turning the chaos of different languages into something everyone could understand. "Ambassador Morrison?" A voice spoke beside him. Jake turned to see a human woman in a military dress uniform. Lieutenant Katie Chen offered a crisp salute. "I'm your military attaché. Welcome to Council Station 7. "Thanks, Lieutenant. How long have you been here?" 3 months, sir. I came ahead to set up our offices and living quarters." Katie gestured toward a corridor. "I'll show you to the diplomatic section. We have meetings scheduled with several representatives this afternoon." As they walked, Katie provided a running commentary on station politics. She pointed out various species and explained their positions in the council hierarchy. The information confirmed what Jake had learned from his research, but hearing it from someone who lived here daily added useful context. Their offices occupied a modest section in the diplomatic quarter. Nothing fancy, but functional. Earth was too new to rate premium space. Jake did not mind. Better to start small and earn respect than demand it and breed resentment. Dr. Ryan Blake waited in the main office. The medical officer had arrived 2 weeks before Jake. "Good to finally meet you in person, Ambassador. I've set up our medical facilities. Basic equipment. But I can handle most emergencies." "Any cases so far?" Jake asked. Ryan nodded. "A few delegates from smaller species have come by. Minor issues, mostly. But they seemed surprised that I treated them without asking for payment first." Jake raised an eyebrow. "The Council doesn't provide medical care? Only to major power representatives. Everyone else pays out of pocket or relies on their own governments. Many of the smaller species can't afford quality care." Ryan's expression showed clear frustration. "I've been treating anyone who needs help. Figured that's what we're supposed to do." "Keep doing it," Jake said. "Good medicine is good diplomacy." The first official meeting came that afternoon. Jake sat across from Commander Thex of the Chitauri species. The insectoid alien stood nearly 7 feet tall, with 4 arms and compound eyes that seemed to look in multiple directions at once. Despite the alien appearance, Thex's posture and mannerisms suggested military discipline. "Ambassador Morrison, I appreciate you agreeing to this meeting." Thex's translator gave his words a clicking undertone. "Most new species focus exclusively on the major powers. They ignore smaller delegations like mine. I don't see the point in ignoring potential friends," Jake replied. "Tell me about the Chitauri." Thex seemed surprised by the question. For the next hour, he described his species and their history. The Chitauri possessed brilliant strategic minds. Their hive structure allowed for complex coordinated planning that other species struggled to match, but the major powers viewed them as dangerous competitors. The Craven Empire particularly disliked the Chitauri's military potential. "We are restricted to defensive forces only," Thex explained. The Council passed this limitation 50 years ago. They claimed it was for galactic security. In reality, the Craven feared competition. Jake listened carefully, asking questions and taking mental notes. He noticed something important. Thex relaxed as they talked. The formal military bearing eased. They were having an actual conversation, not a diplomatic performance. Over the following weeks, Jake met with representatives from a dozen smaller species. Minister Lyra, of the aquatic Undari. Elder Voss, of the reptilian Skrell. Ambassador Tarn, of the crystalline Morvith. Each meeting followed a similar pattern. Formal introductions gave way to genuine conversation. Jake asked about their cultures, their challenges, their hopes for the future. He listened more than he talked. Katie Chen started organizing informal gatherings in the human quarters. Nothing official, just social events where delegates could relax. She discovered that most species had never been invited to such casual meetings. The major powers kept everything formal and hierarchical. The smaller species rarely interacted with each other outside official council business. The gatherings became popular quickly. Representatives from different species talked freely, sharing stories and discovering common ground. Ryan Blake brought medical equipment and offered free health scans. He found and treated conditions that delegates had lived with for years because they could not afford proper care. Jake noticed something developing. The smaller species were forming connections. They traded contact information. They started meeting outside the human gatherings. Networks were building, based not on treaties or formal agreements, but on simple friendship and mutual respect. Warlord Drexus of the Craven Empire noticed too. The massive warrior stood 8 feet tall and carried ceremonial weapons that were anything but ceremonial. He approached Jake in the station's central plaza. "Ambassador Morrison, the Craven Empire has observed your activities." Drexus's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "You waste time with irrelevant species. If Earth wishes to matter in galactic affairs, you should seek proper allies among the powers that control events." Jake met the warlord's gaze steadily. "I appreciate the advice, Warlord. But on Earth, we believe every voice matters. We're not looking for controllers, we're looking for friends." Drexus made a sound that might have been laughter. "Friends do not win wars or secure trade routes. Power wins. Your species is new here. You will learn." After Drexus left, Katie spoke quietly. "That sounded like a warning." "It was," Jake agreed, "but not the kind he thinks. He's not warning us about danger. He's warning us that we're becoming dangerous to them." "How?" "We're one species with a small fleet and limited resources." Jake watched a group of delegates across the plaza. Commander Thex, Minister Lyra, and Elder Voss stood together, talking and occasionally glancing toward the human section. "Because we're doing something the major powers never expected. We're treating the smaller species like they matter. We're building relationships based on respect, not dominance. That's more dangerous to the current power structure than any fleet." Katie followed his gaze. "You think they'll try to stop us?" "Eventually, but not yet. Right now, they think we're naive newcomers who will learn better when reality hits us. They'll let us play our games for a while." Jake smiled slightly. "Which gives us time to make real friends. Because when they do move against us, we won't be alone." The foundation was being laid, stone by stone, friendship by friendship. Jake Morrison did not know yet just how much the major powers would fear what humanity was building, but he would find out soon enough. The emergency message reached Jake Morrison at 3 a.m, station time. Minister Lyra's voice carried barely controlled panic through the translator. "Ambassador Morrison, I need your help. My world is dying." Jake pulled on his uniform and headed to the communication center. Katie Chen was already there, pulling up data feeds from Ondari space. The images showed crowded medical facilities and streets filled with sick citizens. A plague had swept through the Ondari homeworld's capital city and was spreading fast. Death toll? Jake asked. 12,000 so far, Katie reported. Projected to reach hundreds of thousands within 2 weeks. The Ondari government requested emergency medical assistance from the council 6 hours ago. And Katie's expression darkened. The Veltharian Commerce Guild offered help. For a price. They want exclusive mining rights to the Ondari system's asteroid belt for the next 50 years, plus 20% of the world's annual economic output for 20 years. Jake felt anger rise in his chest. That would bankrupt them. That's the point. The Guild has wanted control of Ondari resources for decades. This plague gives them leverage. Katie pulled up more data. The council voted to respect the Guild's offer and declined to provide emergency intervention. They cited non-interference protocols they ignore whenever it suits the major powers. Jake opened a secure channel to Earth. The time delay for communication was annoying, but he could not wait for responses. He recorded his message. This is Ambassador Morrison, requesting immediate emergency medical assistance for the Ondari homeworld. Plague situation critical. Recommend deploying Dr. Blake's team plus whatever medical supplies and personnel we can spare. This is a chance to show what humanity stands for. He sent the message and turned to Katie. Get Ryan Blake up here. I want to know exactly what he needs. Ryan arrived 15 minutes later, already reviewing the medical data. This is bad, but treatable. The plague is a bacterial infection. Nasty but responding to broad-spectrum antibiotics. The problem is scale. The Ondari don't have enough medical supplies or trained personnel to handle the outbreak. If Earth sends supplies, can you handle deployment? Jake asked. With help, yes. I'll need engineers to set up field hospitals and water purification systems. The infection is spreading through contaminated water sources. Jake contacted Lisa Martinez, Earth's engineering specialist on the station. She had been working on infrastructure projects and learning about alien technology. Lisa arrived quickly, still wiping sleep from her eyes. How fast can you design water purification systems compatible with Ondari biology? Jake asked. Lisa thought for a moment. If I have access to their biological data, maybe 12 hours for the design. Another day to build prototypes. But Ambassador, we don't have the resources here to build enough units for an entire world. Earth will send what we need, Jake said. He hoped he was right. The response from Earth came 6 hours later. The message was brief but clear. Medical supplies, personnel, and equipment were being loaded onto the transport ship Pacific. Estimated arrival at the Ondari homeworld in 40 hours. Earth's government had one instruction. Help them. Jake informed Minister Lyra immediately. The aquatic aliens' relief was visible even through the biological differences. Thank you, Ambassador. What does Earth require in return? Nothing, Jake said. You're our friend. Friends help each other. Not. Nothing. Nothing, Jake said. Nothing, Jake said. Nothing, Jake said. You're our friend. Lyra was silent for a long moment. I do not understand. Every species demands payment for assistance. That is how the galaxy works. That's how it's worked so far, Jake replied. Maybe it's time for something different. Ryan Blake departed on a shuttle within hours, heading to the Ondari homeworld ahead of the Pacific's arrival. He took 2 human nurses and as many medical supplies as the shuttle could carry. The plan was to start treating the worst cases immediately while preparing for the larger relief effort. Katie monitored the situation constantly. Ambassador. We're getting attention. 3 separate major power delegations have requested meetings with you. Let them wait, Jake said. Our priority is helping the Ondari, not managing diplomatic fallout. The Pacific arrived on schedule. Ryan coordinated the relief effort with impressive efficiency. Human medical teams set up field hospitals in the worst affected areas. Lisa Martinez worked with Ondari engineers to deploy water purification systems throughout the capital city. The combination of clean water, antibiotics, and organized medical care stopped the plague's spread within 72 hours. While the medical crisis unfolded, another situation developed. Commander Thex contacted Jake with urgent news. Chitauri border colonies were under attack by pirates. The raiders used military-grade weapons and tactics that suggested backing from a major power. "We need help," Thex said bluntly. "Our defensive forces are good, but these attackers know our patterns. They hit us where we're weak. Someone is feeding them intelligence." Katie Chen studied the attack reports. "These tactics match Craven military doctrine. The pirates are probably mercenaries the Empire is using for deniability." "Can we help them?" Jake asked. Katie considered carefully. "We can't send ships or troops. That would be direct military intervention, and Earth isn't ready for that kind of confrontation. But we can share tactical data and training methods." Jake made the decision quickly. "Do it. Teach them whatever they need to know." Over the next week, Katie worked with Commander Thex and Chitauri military planners. She introduced concepts from human military history: guerrilla tactics, asymmetric warfare, using the enemy's expectations against them. The Chitauri's natural strategic brilliance combined with these new approaches created something formidable. The next pirate raid went very differently. The Chitauri forces appeared to retreat, following their usual patterns. The pirates pursued confidently. Then the trap closed. Chitauri ships hit them from unexpected angles using tactics the pirates had never seen before. The raiders broke and ran. 2 more raids over the following days met similar defeats. The attack stopped. Whoever was backing the pirates decided the Chitauri were no longer easy targets. Commander Thex thanked Katie personally. "You gave us tools we needed. More than that, you trusted us to use them wisely. The Kravan Empire would never share such knowledge. They keep everyone dependent." News of Earth's actions spread through the smaller species delegations. The humans had helped the Ondari expecting nothing in return. They had strengthened the Chitauri without demanding subordination. A pattern was emerging that made other species take notice. Elder Voss of the Skrell approached Jake with a different kind of problem. His species had lost a colony world to corporate seizure. The Veltharian Commerce Guild claimed the Skrell had defaulted on a loan, though the terms of that loan were questionable. Galactic courts had ruled in the guild's favor, and the Skrell lacked the resources to fight the decision. "I do not ask for charity," Voss said with fierce pride. "But if Earth has legal expertise, I would value advice." Ben Cooper was a human lawyer who had arrived on the station 2 weeks earlier. He specialized in international law and had studied the Council's legal framework during his journey. Jake brought him into the conversation. Ben reviewed the case for 3 days. Then he called a meeting with Jake and Elder Voss. "The Guild's case relies on precedents from the last century, but I found older laws that were never repealed. Specifically, protections for smaller species against predatory lending that the Council established 200 years ago." "Why were these laws not used before?" Voss asked. "Because everyone forgot about them," Ben replied. "The major powers benefit from that forgetfulness. But the laws are still valid. I can file an appeal citing these protections. The Council will have to review the case again." Ben worked with Skrell legal experts to build the appeal. He taught them how to research the Council's old legal codes, showing them tools and techniques that had been used on Earth for centuries. The appeal was filed within a week. The Veltharian Commerce Guild was furious. They demanded the appeal be dismissed. But Ben had done his research perfectly. The old laws were clear, and they had never been repealed. The Council's legal committee had no choice but to order a new hearing. The hearing took 2 weeks. Ben argued the case personally, with Skrell lawyers supporting him. He demonstrated that the Guild's loan terms violated protections established by the Council itself. The court had no choice but to rule in the Skrell's favor. The colony was returned. Elder Voss gripped Ben's hand in the Skrell gesture of deep respect. "You gave us back our home, our children's future. How can we repay this?" "You already have," Ben said. "You trusted us to help. You worked with us as equals. That's all we want." Jake watched these events unfold with growing awareness. Earth had not planned a grand strategy. They had simply responded to friends in need. offering help without demanding payment or submission. But the effect was larger than individual acts of assistance. Smaller species were beginning to see Earth differently, not as another power seeking dominance, but as something new. A species that valued friendship over hierarchy, that shared knowledge instead of hoarding it, that believed cooperation worked better than control. In the Council's main chamber, the three major powers held an emergency session. Warlord Drexus, Trademaster Corvin of the Veltharian Guild, and Prime Scientist Rix of the Zephyrite Collective met privately. "The humans are becoming a problem," Corvin stated flatly. "They are disrupting established economic patterns. They are building networks," Rix added. 14 smaller species now have regular contact with Earth. They share information. They coordinate policies. "This is unprecedented," Drexus growled low. "They are naive. They play at friendship while lacking the military strength to back their positions. When reality strikes them, they will learn like everyone else." "I am not so certain," Rick said. "Naivety that produces results is not truly naive. It is strategy we do not yet understand." The meeting ended with agreement to watch the humans more closely. But no action was taken. The major powers still believed they had time. They still thought human idealism would collapse when tested properly. They were wrong about that, and they would discover their mistake soon enough. 6 months had passed since Jake Morrison first arrived at Council Station 7. In that time, everything had changed in ways both subtle and profound. What started as simple friendship had grown into something the galaxy had never seen before. The Accord of Free Worlds was not Jake's idea. It came from the smaller species themselves. 14 races had gathered in the human diplomatic section, talking about their shared experiences and growing connections. Minister Lyra proposed the concept first. "We are stronger together than separate," she said. "Earth has shown us that cooperation without domination is possible. Why should we not formalize what already exists?" Elder Voss agreed immediately. "The major powers maintain their strength through formal alliances. We should do the same. But different. Better." Commander Thex added practical considerations. "We need mutual defense agreements. The Kravan Empire will test us again. Next time, we should face them together." Jake listened to the discussion carefully. He understood the desire for formal structure, but he also knew the dangers. If we create a traditional alliance, the major powers will see us as a rival bloc. That could provoke exactly the kind of confrontation we want to avoid. "Then we create something new," said Ambassador Tarn of the Morveth. His crystalline form reflected light in patterns that indicated deep thought. Not a hierarchy with Earth at the top. Not a bloc with voting powers weighted by military strength. Something truly equal. They worked on the details for 3 weeks. The final document was simple, but revolutionary. Every member species had equal voice. All decisions required unanimous consent. No species could veto others, but equally, no decision could be forced on anyone. Technology, trade benefits, and defensive support would be shared freely among all members. Most importantly, Earth was explicitly not the leader. Jake insisted on this point. If we're the ones in charge, this becomes another power structure. We need to be partners, not bosses. The Accord of Free Worlds was announced publicly. The galaxy's reaction was mixed. Smaller species who were not yet members expressed interest. The major powers showed concern but did not immediately act. They still believed this was harmless idealism that would collapse under its own weight. Captain Alex Turner of the Earth vessel Meridian took charge of coordinating joint military exercises. The first combined drill was chaotic. 14 different species with different communication methods, different tactical doctrines, and different command structures trying to work together. It should have been a disaster, but Alex approached the problem differently than traditional military commanders. Instead of imposing a rigid hierarchy, he asked each species what they did best. The Chitauri excelled at strategic planning and could calculate battle scenarios faster than any computer. The Skrell were fierce warriors who never retreated. The Ondari's aquatic origins gave them unique perspectives on three-dimensional space combat. The Morveth could coordinate multiple ship systems simultaneously through their crystalline networks. We don't need everyone to fight the same way, Alex explained. We need everyone to fight their way. But, together, the exercises improved rapidly. Each species contributed their strengths while respecting others' approaches. They developed tactics that no single species would have conceived. The combined force was not as large as major power fleets, but it was flexible, adaptive, and surprisingly effective. Sam Rodriguez worked on establishing shared technology databases. Earth had brought useful innovations, but so had other Accord members. The Ondari possessed advanced water reclamation systems. The Chitauri had developed efficient power generation methods. The Morveth created communication systems that were nearly impossible to intercept. The major powers keep their technology locked away, Sam explained to an audience of Accord engineers. They sell small advances at huge prices, keeping everyone dependent. We're going to do the opposite. Everything we develop gets shared with all members immediately. No patents, no restrictions, no fees. The Veltharian Commerce Guild noticed this policy first. Their entire economic model depended on controlling access to technology and charging for every innovation. The Accord's free sharing undermined centuries of established practice. Trademaster Corvan filed a formal complaint with the Council. The Accord's technology sharing violates established intellectual property protocols. They are distributing advanced systems without proper licensing. Ben Cooper responded with carefully researched arguments. The Council's intellectual property protocols apply to commercial trade, not to sharing among cooperative partners. Members of the Accord are not selling technology. They are giving it freely within their community. The protocols do not prohibit this. The Council's legal committee agreed with Ben's interpretation. The Veltharian Guild could do nothing legally to stop the sharing. Emma Walsh started cultural exchange programs that went beyond simple diplomacy. Human artists visited Ondari water cities and created sculptures that flowed with the tides. Chitauri composers worked with human musicians to create complex harmonies that neither species could produce alone. Skrill warriors trained with human martial artists, learning new techniques while teaching their own ancient forms. But the exchanges went deeper than art and combat. Emma organized family visits. Ondari children came to Earth and swam in oceans that reminded them of home. Human teenagers visited Chitauri colonies and learned about hive mind cooperation. Families from different species spent time together, sharing meals and stories. Culture is not just art, Emma explained to Jake. It's how we live, how we raise our children, how we think about the universe. If we really want to understand each other, we need to share that deeper level. The cultural bonds created something unexpected. Members of different Accord species began to think of each other as extended family. Not metaphorically, but genuinely. They cared about each other's children, celebrated each other's holidays, mourned each other's losses. The major powers watched these developments with growing alarm. Economic analysis showed disturbing trends. Accord members were trading primarily with each other now, bypassing the traditional commercial networks the Veltharian Guild controlled. The combined economy of 14 species was smaller than any major power individually, but it was growing fast and becoming increasingly self-sufficient. Military intelligence painted an equally concerning picture. The Accord's combined fleet was not large, but its cooperative tactics made it far more effective than its size suggested. More worrying was the defensive network being established. Any attack on one Accord world would bring immediate response from all others. The distributed defense made traditional military intimidation difficult. Prime scientist Rix of the Zephyrite Collective brought the most troubling report. Our monitoring shows that public opinion on our own worlds is shifting. Citizens see the Accord's broadcasts showing cooperative government, free technology sharing, and genuine partnership. They ask why we do not offer the same. Warlord Drexus dismissed this concern. Public opinion is irrelevant. We maintain power through strength, not popularity. That has been true historically, Rix agreed. But the Accord is changing the equation. They demonstrate that strength can come from cooperation rather than domination. If our populations begin to believe this, our traditional power structures become vulnerable. Jake Morrison was called to answer questions before the full council. The chamber was packed. Every species wanted to hear this confrontation. Trademaster Corvan spoke first. Ambassador Morrison, the Accord of Free Worlds is destabilizing established galactic order. Your alliance threatens economic systems that have maintained peace for centuries. Jake stood calmly. The Accord is not my alliance. I am one member among equals, and we threaten nothing except the assumption that smaller species should remain powerless and dependent. Warlord Drexus leaned forward. You are building a rival power block. Do not pretend otherwise. Your military exercises and technology sharing demonstrate clear intention to challenge established authority. We are building exactly what we claim, Jake replied. A community of equals who help each other. If that challenges your authority, perhaps you should ask why equality feels threatening. Prime Scientist Rix took a different approach. Ambassador, surely you understand that rapid change creates instability. The systems you are disrupting have maintained galactic peace. What you call equality could lead to chaos. Jake met the scientist's gaze. You call it peace. But peace for whom? The major powers enjoy peace because smaller species lack the strength to resist your control. That's not peace. That's submission enforced by overwhelming power. The Accord offers real peace, based on mutual respect rather than fear. The council chamber erupted in argument. Smaller species delegates applauded Jake's words. Major power representatives shouted objections. The session dissolved into chaos. Later, in the human quarters, Katie Chen looked worried. We've pushed them too far. They're going to act against us. Probably, Jake agreed. But what can they do? We haven't broken any laws. We haven't attacked anyone. We've just made friends and helped each other. Lisa Martinez joined the conversation. They can make new laws. The major powers control 60% of the council's voting power. If they unite, they can pass legislation to restrict what we're doing. Jake nodded slowly. That's the one move I've been worried about. If they're desperate enough to work together despite their mutual rivalries, they could legally prohibit alliance formation. Can they do that? Katie asked. Create laws that specifically target friendly relationships between species? Not. They can try, Ben Cooper said, entering the room. But such laws would be difficult to enforce. How do you legally define friendship? How do you prohibit cooperation that benefits everyone involved? The more restrictive they make the laws, the more they reveal their fear of equality. Jake looked at his team. These humans had worked tirelessly to build something better than what existed before. They had approached galactic politics with fresh eyes. Unbound by centuries of established practice, they had asked a simple question. What if we treated everyone with respect? That simple question was about to trigger a crisis that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization, because the major powers finally understood what Jake had known from the beginning. Ideas are more dangerous than weapons. Friendship is more powerful than fear, and once people see that equality is possible, they will never accept domination again. The storm was coming. But the Accord would face it together. The three major powers did something unprecedented. For the first time in recorded galactic history, the Kravan Empire, Veltharian Commerce Guild, and Zephrite Collective put aside their centuries of rivalry and competition. They met in absolute secret, with no other species present, no observers, no records. The meeting lasted 3 days. When it ended, they had drafted legislation that would change everything. Jake Morrison received an unofficial warning from an unexpected source. A young Kravan officer named Krell contacted him through encrypted channels. Ambassador, I risk execution for this. But you should know, the major powers are planning action against the Accord. Legislation is being prepared. What kind of legislation? Jake asked. I do not know details, but the military is being positioned. Fleets are moving toward Accord worlds. This is more than political maneuvering. They are preparing for enforcement. Jake thanked Krell and immediately called an emergency meeting with his core team and Accord leadership. Commander Thex, Minister Lyra, Elder Voss, and representatives from 11 other species gathered in person or via secure communication. We knew this was coming eventually, Jake said. The question is what form it takes and how we respond. Katie Chen displayed tactical maps. Military intelligence confirms fleet movements. Craven battle groups are taking positions around our worlds. Not close enough to be obvious, but positioned to enforce a blockade within hours if ordered. The Veltharian Guild is restricting our access to trade networks, Minister Lyra added. Medical supplies, replacement parts, basic goods. Deliveries are being delayed through bureaucratic procedures. Lisa Martinez brought up communication data. The Zephyrite Collective is interfering with our networks. Nothing obvious enough to prove, but our broadcasts are experiencing technical difficulties that their technicians could easily fix, but claim they cannot. The pressure was building systematically. The major powers were demonstrating their ability to strangle the Accord economically, militarily, and technologically, whenever they chose. The official announcement came 2 days later. The Galactic Council held a special emergency session. Every species was required to attend. The chamber fell silent as Trademaster Corvin stepped forward to read the proposed legislation. For the stability and security of all galactic civilizations, the Council hereby establishes the Alliance Regulation Act. All formal alliance agreements between member species must be registered with the Council and approved by majority vote. Existing alliances must be registered within 30 days, or face dissolution. Unregistered alliances are prohibited and subject to enforcement action, including economic sanctions, trade restrictions, and military intervention if necessary. The chamber exploded in protest. Smaller species objected loudly. But Corvin simply waited for silence, then continued. This legislation is necessary to prevent the formation of destabilizing power blocks that threaten galactic peace. The Council exists to maintain order. Uncontrolled alliance formation undermines that order. The vote was called immediately, with no time for debate or discussion. The major powers voted in favor. Every smaller species voted against, but the weighted voting system gave the major powers 60% of total votes. The Alliance Regulation Act passed into law. Warlord Drexus addressed the chamber directly. All species have 30 days to comply. The Accord of Free Worlds must dissolve or face consequences. This is not negotiable. Jake requested permission to speak. The council granted it reluctantly. He stood slowly, looking around the chamber at faces both human and alien. I want to make sure I understand this correctly. The 3 most powerful species in the galaxy have just formed the most comprehensive alliance in galactic history, combining military, economic, and technological power into a unified bloc. And they justify this by claiming that other species forming alliances threatens stability. Murmurs of agreement came from smaller species delegations. Jake continued. You fear the Accord because it operates differently than traditional power structures. We share instead of hoard. We cooperate as equals instead of maintaining hierarchies. We help each other without demanding submission. And this terrifies you. You do not terrify us, Drexus growled. You annoy us, like insects that must be swept away. If we are just annoying insects, why pass laws to stop us? Why position military fleets? Why interfere with our communications and trade? Jake's voice remained calm but firm. You are not afraid of our military strength. You are afraid of our example. You fear that other species will see what we have built and demand the same from you. Prime Scientist Rix spoke for the first time. This council was established to prevent galactic war. Your Accord, however well-intentioned, disrupts centuries of careful balance. That disruption could lead to conflict. The balance you describe is not peace, Jake replied. It is control. You maintain order by keeping everyone else weak and dependent. You call it stability. We call it oppression. The Accord threatens that system not through violence but through demonstrating that better alternatives exist. Trademaster Corvin's voice was ice cold. You have 30 days, Ambassador Morrison. Dissolve the Accord voluntarily, or we will dissolve it for you. The choice is yours. The session ended. Jake walked back to the human quarters, surrounded by anxious Accord representatives. "What do we do?" Minister Lyra asked. "We cannot fight the combined might of the major powers." "We could try," Elder Voss said. His warrior pride was evident. "Die fighting rather than submit." Commander Thex shook his head. "Honorable but futile. They outnumber our combined fleets 10-1. We would be destroyed within days." Jake called for calm. "Let me think. There has to be a way through this that does not involve either surrender or suicide." Over the next week, Jake barely slept. He studied the Alliance Regulation Act, looking for loopholes. He reviewed galactic law, searching for precedents. He analyzed the major powers' positions, seeking weaknesses, but every path seemed blocked. Katie brought regular updates on military positions. "The blockade forces are in place around all Accord worlds. They are not attacking, just waiting. The message is clear. Comply or starve." Lisa reported on economic pressure. "Supply lines are cut. We have maybe 3 weeks before critical shortages begin on some worlds. Medicine, food, power generation components. They are targeting necessities." Ryan Blake delivered the worst news. "The Ondari homeworld is facing another health crisis. The treatment facilities we built need replacement parts. Those parts are being held in Veltharian customs. Without them, people will die." Jake felt the weight of impossible responsibility. Hundreds of millions of lives depended on decisions he would make in the next few days. The easy path was surrender. Dissolve the Accord, apologize, accept whatever terms the major powers demanded. Safety through submission. But he kept thinking about Krell, the young Cravon officer who risked execution to warn them. About the Ondari children who had visited Earth and played in human schools. About Chitauri strategists who shared their knowledge freely. About the Skrell families who sent thanks for the return of their colony. The Accord was not just a political agreement. It was proof that better futures were possible. Proof that different species could work together as genuine equals. Proof that power did not have to mean domination. On the 15th day, Ben Cooper burst into Jake's office with excitement unusual for the normally calm lawyer. "I found something. Maybe. I am not sure if it works. But it is worth trying." Jake listened as Ben explained his idea. It was risky. It required perfect execution. It might not work at all. But it was the third option Jake had been searching for. He called an emergency Accord meeting and presented Ben's plan. The response was mixed. Some species saw the potential. Others thought it was too dangerous. Commander Thex summarized the concern clearly. "This plan requires us to trust human strategy completely. If it fails, we will be in worse position than before." "Can you guarantee success?" "No," Jake admitted. "I cannot guarantee anything except that surrender guarantees failure. This plan gives us a chance." Elder Voss spoke with the authority of his warrior traditions. "Sometimes the boldest plan is the best plan. I trust the humans. They have earned that trust through action. I say we proceed." One by one, the other species agreed. The vote was unanimous. They would try Jake's plan. The final week before the deadline was chaos. Every Accord member worked frantically. Sam Rodriguez coordinated technical preparations. Emma Walsh handled communications. Alex Turner positioned the few military assets they had. Lisa Martinez built systems that had never been attempted before. Jake sent one final message to Earth, explaining what they planned to do. The response came back quickly. "We trust your judgment. Do what you think is right. Earth stands with you." On the 30th day, Jake Morrison walked into the Galactic Council chamber. Every eye fixed on him. Warlord Drexus leaned forward expectantly. Trademaster Corvin showed barely hidden satisfaction. Prime Scientist Rykes watched with analytical interest. "Ambassador Morrison," Drexus rumbled, "has the Accord of Free Worlds agreed to dissolve as required by law?" Jake took a deep breath. Everything they had built hung in the balance. The lives and futures of hundreds of millions rested on what happened in the next few minutes. "Warlord Drexus, I am prepared to make our official response to the Alliance Regulation Act." The chamber fell completely silent, waiting for his answer. Jake Morrison stood before the Galactic Council with calm confidence that he did not entirely feel. Every calculation had been checked. Every system was in place. But so much could still go wrong. The Accord of Free Worlds has carefully reviewed the Alliance Regulation Act, Jake began. We acknowledge that it is now galactic law, passed through proper legal procedures. We respect the authority of this council to create and enforce such laws. Warlord Drexus looked satisfied. Trademaster Corvin smiled slightly. They thought they had won. Therefore, Jake continued, effective immediately, the Accord of Free Worlds is dissolved as a formal, legal entity. Gasps filled the chamber. Smaller species delegates looked shocked and betrayed. Major power representatives appeared triumphant. But Jake was not finished. However, we have a question about the scope of this new law. The Alliance Regulation Act prohibits formal alliances between species. But I need clarification. Does it prohibit friendship between individuals from different species? Prime Scientist Rix's expression showed immediate understanding. This was not surrender. Jake pressed forward. Does this law prohibit free trade between willing partners who happen to be from different species? Does it prohibit cultural exchange programs? Does it prohibit sharing medical knowledge that saves lives? Does it prohibit coordinating defensive strategies against common threats like piracy? Well, Trademaster Corvan stood abruptly. You are playing word games, Ambassador. The intent of the law is clear. The intent may be clear to you. Ben Cooper spoke up from the human delegation. But law is not about intent. Law is about specific language and defined terms. The Alliance Regulation Act prohibits formal alliance structures. It says nothing about individual relationships, voluntary cooperation, or mutual assistance between friends. Warlord Drexus's voice was dangerous. You think you can continue your activities under different names? We will not accept such obvious deception. It is not deception, Jake replied calmly. The Accord of Free Worlds no longer exists as a legal entity. There is no formal alliance to regulate. What remains are 14 species who happen to be friends, who happen to trade with each other, who happen to share knowledge, and who happen to help each other when needed. Jake activated a signal. Across the galaxy, on every major world and minor colony, broadcasts began simultaneously. Matt Sullivan had spent the last 2 weeks building a distributed network that could not be easily shut down. What played on those broadcasts was simple but revolutionary. Live feeds from what had been Accord meetings, not recordings, but real-time broadcasts. Every discussion, every decision, every debate would now be public and available to anyone in the galaxy who wanted to watch. We are making everything transparent, Jake explained. Since we are no longer a formal alliance, there is nothing to hide. Anyone can watch how we cooperate. Anyone can see that we operate through consensus, not control. Anyone can observe that we share benefits equally. Prime Scientist Rick spoke quickly. This broadcast violates communications regulations. Ben Cooper responded immediately. Which specific regulation? The Council guarantees freedom of information exchange. We are not interfering with other broadcasts. We are simply sharing our own activities publicly. If you wish to prohibit this, you will need to pass new legislation restricting free speech. Trademaster Corvin tried different tactics. You are still coordinating economically. That creates an unfair trade block. We are trading voluntarily with partners we choose, Jake said. The Council has never prohibited free trade between willing participants. If you wish to trade with us under the same fair terms, we welcome your participation. Emma Walsh activated the next phase. Cultural broadcasts began alongside the political feeds. Humans and Chitauri creating art together. Ondari and Skrell families sharing meals. Children from a dozen species playing together, laughing in ways that needed no translation. The effect on watching populations was immediate and powerful. Citizens across the galaxy saw genuine cooperation, genuine friendship, genuine equality. They compared this to their own government's secretive councils, restrictive hierarchies, and controlled information. Warlord Drexus tried to block the broadcasts in Kraven space. Technical teams worked to interfere with the signals, but Lisa Martinez had designed the network using distributed technology that the Accord had developed together. Shutting down one node just rerouted through others. The more the Kraven tried to suppress the information, the harder their own citizens worked to access it. Katie Chen provided the final element. She published the Accord's defensive coordination plans completely. Every tactic, every strategy, every training method. All available publicly. If we are such a threat, Katie explained, surely everyone should know exactly how we operate. Transparency removes fear. It shows we have nothing to hide. The major powers faced a crisis they had not anticipated. They could not blockade trade that had no formal structure. They could not sanction alliances that did not legally exist. They could not suppress broadcasts without revealing their fear of free information. More critically, their own populations were reacting. Protests began on Kraven military stations. Soldiers asked why they served a government that feared transparency. Veltharian merchants established fair trade cooperatives independent of guild control. Zephyrite scientists shared research openly, inspired by the Accord's example. The council chamber descended into chaos as delegates argued about how to respond. The major powers demanded new legislation to prohibit what the former Accord members were doing. But drafting such laws proved impossible without revealing their authoritarian intentions. How do you legally prohibit friendship? How do you criminalize voluntary cooperation? How do you ban helping neighbors in need? Every attempt to write such laws exposed the major powers as tyrants trying to control basic social relationships. Jake let the chaos continue for 20 minutes before speaking again. This council was established to promote peace and prosperity for all galactic civilizations. The original charter, which I have studied carefully, speaks of cooperation, mutual respect, and shared advancement. Those principles have been abandoned in favor of maintaining power for a few. He looked directly at the major power representatives. You passed the Alliance Regulation Act out of desperation. You feared losing control. But you have lost something more important than control. You have lost legitimacy. When governments fear their own people learning the truth, when they prohibit friendship and cooperation, when they use force to maintain systems that only benefit themselves, they reveal themselves as unworthy of leadership. Elder Voss stood. The Skrell will continue trading with our friends. We will continue sharing culture. We will continue coordinating defense against common threats. If the Council wishes to prohibit this, explain to the galaxy why friendship is illegal. Minister Lyra added her voice. The Ondari will continue accepting medical assistance from those who offer it freely. If this is criminal, we choose to be criminals. Commander Thex spoke with military precision. The Chitauri will continue learning from those who teach without demanding submission. Our strategic partnerships are based on respect, not regulation. One by one, every former Accord species made similar statements. They would comply with the law by dissolving formal alliance structures, but they would not stop being friends, trading partners, and mutual defenders. The major powers tried to respond but found themselves trapped. Economic sanctions required targeting specific trade agreements, but the trade was no longer formally structured. Military action required identifying enemy assets, but there were no enemy organizations to target. Information suppression required blocking specific communications, but the broadcasts were distributed across thousands of nodes. 3 months later, the situation had transformed completely. The Alliance Regulation Act remained law, technically enforced but practically meaningless. What had been the Accord of Free Worlds operated more effectively without formal legal structure. 17 additional species joined the informal network. They participated in public broadcasts, shared technology freely, and coordinated policies through open discussion rather than closed treaties. The network had no name, no charter, no legal status. It was simply how things worked now. More significantly, reform movements had emerged within the major powers themselves. Young Kraven officers like Krell led discussions about military reform and accountability. Veltharian merchants demanded guild democratization. Zephyrite scientists established open research collectives. The old order was crumbling not through war or revolution, but through the simple power of demonstrated alternatives. When people see that better systems are possible, they demand change. Jake Morrison walked through Council Station 7's main plaza. The station had changed dramatically. Where once species segregated by power level, now they mixed freely. Jatari strategists discussed tactics with Kravan reformers. Ondari engineers collaborated with Zephyrite scientists. Human children played games with kids from 8 different species. Commander Thex approached with Elder Voss and Minister Lyra. They were not alliance partners in any legal sense, just friends taking a walk together. The council is discussing new reforms, Thex said. Democratic representation, transparent voting, equal voice for all species. They claim these are their own ideas, but we know better. Voss laughed, a sound like grinding stones. Let them claim credit. Results matter more than recognition. Lyra looked at Jake thoughtfully. You knew this would happen. From the beginning, you understood that changing systems requires changing minds first. Jake shook his head. I did not know. I hoped. There is a difference. We gambled that when given the choice between control and cooperation, enough people would choose cooperation. And if you had been wrong? Lyra asked. Then we would have lost everything. But we would have lost, trying to build something better. That matters too. They walked together through the station, 4 beings from 4 different worlds, friends who had helped change the galaxy simply by treating each other with respect. Behind them, in the council chambers, the major powers continued debating how to respond to changes they could no longer control. They had passed the Alliance Regulation Act out of desperation, trying to preserve their dominance through law, but they had failed to understand the most important principle. Laws can govern institutions and regulate structures. Laws cannot control friendship, cannot prohibit cooperation, cannot eliminate hope for better futures. Humanity had brought something dangerous to the galactic community, not weapons or technology, but ideas. The idea that equality was possible. The idea that cooperation worked better than domination. The idea that transparency defeated fear. Those ideas, once released, could never be contained. The galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly what it needed.